Welcome to Legal Aid of Northwest Texas and the Community Revitalization Project. Legal Aid of Northwest Texas is a nonprofit law firm that provides free civil legal services to low-income individuals, families, and groups who qualify for services. The Community Revitalization Project is one of the projects within Legal Aid that provides legal help to low-income individuals and groups and focuses on three basic areas: housing justice, environmental justice, and community development. Legal Aid of Northwest Texas works to advance and protect the rights of millions of low-income people by providing free civil legal assistance to ensure equal access to justice. Our nonprofit coaching team is now happy to present to you our latest project, which is the 501c3 course of classes to support community groups in maintaining tax-exempt compliance. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rosetta.
Okay, we will get it going this morning. We want to thank everyone for being here. We are very excited about this series of workshops that are going to pretty much give you an in-depth understanding as to why maintaining records of the revenue, expenses, and your assets is important. At the end of the year, every nonprofit should already have their records in order. Our purpose today is to teach you a little bit about the form IRS 990 and to make sure that you lose maybe a little bit of fear that you might have. Every board member, anybody who's working in a nonprofit should have a basic understanding of this form. So that's why we're here. We want to thank everybody. We want to let you know that we value your time. We would like to ask you to stand by with questions. Feel free to put them on the chat. We're going to go back to them. So I'd like to just set that up by just letting you know if you have any questions, don't keep them to memory. Figure out how to write them in the chat. If you can't figure that out, write them up, and we'll have a segment in the end where we will hear from you if you were not able to put your question in the chat. Just to get started, I'd like to just go over briefly what we're going to be covering today, and that would be Legal Aid of Northwest Texas and Community Revitalization Project's background. One of our paralegals, Bernice, I'm sorry, I screwed up her name, Bernice Ogbonda, should be presenting that. I will then speak briefly as to what it is we're going to be covering in a tiny detail. It's going to then be split between Sam Prince and Nancy Jakowitz, and they are going to be covering these portions of the form. We're going to have a section after we complete the form where you are going to be able to put in, ask any questions that you have or make comments that you might have. And then subsequent to that, we'll have a brief section. You'll see that it is relatively simple process for registration. And we're going to have Rosetta Howard Jackson, who is going to present to us how this platform is accessible to you, from the very beginning. And we're going to have a brief question and answer session after that, and that should be it for the day. Without further ado, I'd like to ask Bernice to introduce herself and to let us know all about Legal Aid and CRP.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Bernice Obunda. As Eleazar mentioned, I'm a paralegal with Legal Aid of Northwest Texas's Community Revitalization Project. So I'm just going to give a brief background on Legal Aid, Legal Services Corporation, and CRP. So Legal Services Corporation is an independent nonprofit established by Congress in 1976 to provide financial support for civil legal aid to low-income Americans. The corporation currently provides funding to 134 independent nonprofit and legal aid organizations in every state, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories. Legal Aid of Northwest Texas's mission statement is: the mission of Legal Aid of Northwest Texas is to ensure equal justice for low-income people through the provision of high-quality legal representation and to improve the lives of low-income Texans through the rule of law. Legal Aid focuses its practice areas in support for families, preserving the home, maintaining economic stability, safety, stability, and health, individuals with special needs, problems affecting groups of individuals. Back in 2008, when the bank's subprime mortgage lending practices caused the market to crash and the government to bail out the financial industry responsible for the problem. In the aftermath, those banks were required to pay a fine. Those fines resulted in the funding that was allocated to help communities affected by their financial misappropriation through legal aid. Legal Aid of Northwest Texas decided to launch the Community Revitalization Project, which provides free legal services to underserved communities through support with fair and affordable housing, environmental justice, and community education. What we are doing today is a part of our work by developing capacity in each of the groups that are represented here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Bernice. As I said, what I would like to do now is just go over briefly the content of our workshop. As you see on the left, we're going to be discussing the form. We're waiting for Mr. Sam Prince to honor us with his presence. I hope everything is okay with him. But if he doesn't come in on time, I can take it up and then we can let him take it over from whatever point he shows up. The form itself, our purpose is to point out what might be applicable to you, to point out that there's a lot of information that this form is asking for, but this form is asking for information from all the nonprofits. So you need to just realize that a lot of it will not apply to you. And so we were going to highlight the areas where you should have some awareness of this is what they're asking. That's what the presentation will be about. The second segment is going to be just understanding how to access this portal, which is easy to use. It's free for starting nonprofits. And so that will pretty much be our entire presentation. After this presentation, the following one in October 10th is going to be more into the actual online form. Anybody who is not computer savvy or is not technologically inclined, the recommendation is that you bring someone who has at the very least registered for the online platform, so that by the time tax season comes next year, you're not going to be running around trying to figure out how to quantify the good work that you did the previous year. That being said, we are going to, Ms. Sam is not here yet, so it's my honor to then just begin to talk to you about the actual form. And again, when he shows up, I will acquiesce to his presence and let him take it over. I like the way Sam makes his presentations because he makes them simpler. I put in too much information sometimes. But having said that, when you are looking at IRS Form 990EZ, you are filing a form that tells the government all of our revenue should be exempt from taxation. The first segment is parts A through L, and it talks about the biographical information about your actual filing. This is a 2019 form. You would put in your calendar year, or if your tax year begins at another point than January 1st, then you want to fill that in here. So basically, if you change the address, name, things like this, you would check that information. Again, this is going to always we're going to show you how to do this online, so you don't need to know any of all this, but this is the information that they ask for. So any of this is information that is necessary if you actually, change your name or your address for your organization, the employer ID number, standard information that they need, your phone number, who are they going to call if there's a question, which normally they don't. The accounting method usually is cash. Whatever you're doing, you want to let them know. Hold on a moment. I am recording. Thank you. And so, yes. So this portion here is, I guess, the most important thing that I want to point out. Even in the actual online program, the system is going to ask you if your organization is not required to attach Schedule B. What you need to know is if your organization received $5,000 as a donation from any one individual, then you need to you need to file Schedule B. If nobody donated more than $5,000 throughout the scope of the year, if nobody made that donation, nobody, made either multiple donations that total that, or just a one-time gift that totaled beyond $5,000. If nobody did that, you check here, and then the system is not going to look for Schedule B. If you do not check here, the system is going to say, yeah, you need to file Schedule B, and it'll consider this to be a filing that is in error. So that's just the most important portion of this segment. Most of the organizations that we're working with are corporations. It could be an association and other. Let's just then go into part 1, which is, I think we are able to, yep. Part 1, we have highlighted the areas in which a regular nonprofit has revenue. It could change. You could, somebody could donate stock, as I've said before, and that would be a different type of revenue. But for now, your contributions, your gifts, if you get grants, a similar amount received. I wanted to point out that in the last session, we figured out that program service revenue would include if a professional individual does any kind of work for you, they quantify this and give you an in-kind receipt for professional services, that amount would go here. I checked this up with the nonprofit accountant, who, by the way, I'm still waiting for. Okay, gross income from fundraising events, meaning how much money did you receive altogether. And so just to keep this moving forward relatively quickly, if you have, let's say, I know a nonprofit that has actually been helping the homeless, and what they do is they run a thrift store. So that's their inventory. So if they don't pay anything for it, then they put the gross number of sales here and then nothing here if everything was gifted. But if they had to pay for the goods, then they put the amount here. And then what that does is it provides them with the actual number of gross profit of when you are selling inventory. And the reason why I'm getting into this is because it is a good strategy to be able to sell things that other people give you to for the purpose of helping the less fortunate. So I just happen to know that because it's a very good situation to have. Anyway, if you have any other kind of revenue, as I said, if somebody donates, I don't know, 200,000 stock, shares of stock from Apple, then you would put that under other revenue. And you see Schedule O, here you would need to figure out where to put it, but because you're going to learn how to do it in the next session, pretty much if you put any amount here, the system will bring you to the place where you will describe what that is. One moment, please. Okay, I will go to thank you for the question. We will get to that later. I'm trying to keep a lot of balls in the air. All right, let's go back to the expenses. Total revenue, of course, is everything that you input that applies to you. Expenses, grants, and similar amounts that you paid out. If you paid out any grants, that's why I didn't highlight it. Benefits paid to or for members, any kind of benefit that the groups that have memberships. Normally, the groups that are here, as far as I know, don't have a membership where they put in, their dues or things like that. So any benefits paid in that situation, you put it here. These are more standardized: salaries, professional fees, rent, printing, and other expenses. Other expenses is where you're going to put most of your expenses, because they would be, your travel, your food that either you donate, or food because you had events, and just all the expenses would likely end up under category 16. I'm dyslexic. Category 16. Total expenses, you wouldn't have to worry about this in the electronic file, so don't worry about it. Net assets. We were discussing the last time, actually, we were going through this, that at the beginning of the year, you start with an excess in assets, or you may be under, so it could be a deficit. So here, what happens is that the form is telling you what to add up or subtract. But in general, in the actual filing that you're going to be doing online, the system will ask you, what did you start the year with? What did you end the year with? And at the end of that, you will have the net assets or fund balances at the end of the year. So I hope that makes sense. Basically, you want to make sure that if somebody donates, a van, or in Rose's case, a $47,000 asset, you want to quantify that. You want to have the documentation that says this is the value of it. We've gone over, how donations need to be quantified in previous sessions. And we do have forms that if anybody needs anything like that, please let us know. We have templates that you could use. All that to say, be aware of what assets the organization has, because generally organizations end up collecting things, and if you don't put it on your balance sheet, these are assets, they don't exist, so that makes you smaller. So in Rose's case, I'm sorry, here's Mariah again. In Rose's case, she would be sure that for next year she has an asset, and I'll show that here. She'll have an asset at the beginning of the year. It was nothing, but then she received a $47,000 asset that is going to go here. Your cash, your lands. In Rose's case, I don't know if it's considered a building, but let's not get into that detail right now. You also want to quantify your liabilities. If you end up having to, get a lease for something, you want to describe what that is at the beginning of the year. Did that liability exist? At the end of the year, what was it at the end of the year? And then, the system will balance everything out. It's very important that your balance sheets are balanced, or the system is not going to allow you to file your taxes. So you want to make sure you keep track of everything. Now, I am very grateful for the opportunity to pass it on to Nancy Jakowicz, who is going to introduce herself and also explain part 3 of IRS Form 990 Easy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to see if I can add my camera here. But so I'm Nancy Jakowicz. I'm a staff attorney with CRP in our Fort Worth office. And I'm going to talk about the part 3 today, which is kind of more of a descriptive section of IRS Form 990. So previously what Eleazar was describing is more the numbers, the figures, and this is more kind of your own narrative about what you achieved in the previous year, and really focusing on your top 3 programs. So if you participated in our earlier sessions on program development for the nonprofit series, this is kind of an area where you would put that same type of information. And it's one of the reasons it's good to make this section really shine is because often foundations or grant-making institutions will ask for, in addition to your grant application, a copy of your IRS Form 990 or 990 Easy. So you want to make sure that this section here in part 3 is very clear and concise, but also consistent, right, with what you're describing your work to be. So we'll just go through this section here. On the first line, Schedule 0 is something Schedule O is something you would typically include. The next line, what is the organization's primary exempt purpose? You would describe the type of work you do. But here, so we reached out to, I'll just kind of describe this partly by describing what a community-based organization in Como does, just to give you an example, right? So this group, we have 2 folks from Opening Doors for Women in Need on the call, and I'll just describe to you how they input information in sections 28, 29, and 30. Their focus is providing reentry support for women, right? They focus on transitional housing as well as job counseling. And they also have a food access or community garden project. So in section 28, because the transitional housing program is the main focus, they would describe that they provide housing, including utilities, maintenance, support for up to 20 women per year. And a dollar figure in column 28A that they might list would be maybe around $75,000 or $118,000, whatever the figure is they expended in that area in the previous year. Now, if you look at kind of 28 further down where it says grants, you would include a dollar amount if you provided a sub-grant, if you allocated grant funds to another entity to kind of accomplish what you're doing in section 28, you would include that. If you're not sub-granting any funds, you wouldn't include that. And of course, if they're foreign grants, you would check there. So 29, one of their second largest program categories is providing job counseling, job readiness, support for women. And here what they do is partner with other entities to participate in about 5 career fairs per year. They also help up to 75 clients per year with the job search process, including helping with resumes and kind of providing bus passes, the various kinds of kind of support areas that can help an individual look for a job and perhaps have that first kind of more support, right, to stay employed. Here, a dollar figure that they've included in the past or might look to include is around $34,000. Looking at section 30, one of their other key programs is kind of a food access program. They help operate a community garden in the Como neighborhood, and they also work with the grocery store Sprouts to provide food to people who request it. And they have about 57 requests a week, about more than 2,000 they help more than 2,000 people a year with this. And so they would kind of include these numbers on how many people they're helping and describing how they're helping individuals. So in 30A, they would include that dollar figure. I believe it's around $2,000 for their food access project or community garden project. And then they're on section 32 and column 32, they would add up the various expenses for a total program service expense in 32. And
sorry about that.
No problem. So also just look here on line 31, it says other program services described in Schedule O. This is also a place where you can add more information. But again, your goal here is to write in very positive language what you accomplished in the previous year, what your main kind of programs are, and again, the number of people you helped, how you helped them. And this is an area to really make your accomplishments shine, because not only would the IRS be looking at it, but potential new grant-making institutions will be looking at it. So it's a good place to use your best effort to write what you've been doing. And think about this also as, a material that you're going to submit in the future. And maybe this is a way for you to narrow in on your target, right? How you plan to assist the community or your target demographic group. So, okay, that's what we also have. Joyce and Sandra on the program. I'm not sure if you want to add anything. I know one of the questions I had when we were going over the materials is a question I had is, are the expenses that you listed in columns 28A through 31, are they all from one grant, or are they are they 3 different grants? And I think when I talked with Joyce, you mentioned that because previously you've had unrestricted funds, you just allocated the dollars as needed based on where you wanted to focus your programs.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And thank you for sharing your materials and numbers with us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Oh, can I add just one thing?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say that it's very important to make sure that whatever you did with each of your projects, that it does reflect back to what your mission statement is. So if your mission statement says to do this, then those programs need to show that those programs are addressing your mission statement.
Excellent. So using that clear, concise language and presenting yourself as an organization that does X, and then showing how your programs X, Y, and Z support X. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, let's go back to Sam's second session. Okay, so it's important to at least have an idea as to how much the officers of the organization, how much time they're spending on the organization. This list asks for the name and the title, how many hours are averaged per week, if any kind of compensation is given to them, either employment through a W-2 or a compensation on a 1099. If nothing, it says to enter 0. Any health benefits, health benefits could be anything such as, we have a great group of people here, let's pay for some form of stipend for them to get some, I guess it's employee benefit plan, so it wouldn't be here, employee benefit plan, so it would be a W-2, but any other compensation that you give would be any kind of stipend you give, whether it's for any specific thing that deals with health or just anything that the organization is paying them directly. Usually the fiduciary responsibilities of the board of directors prevents them from being paid for doing that work. So any kind of payment that they receive is set out here. So, so that you can show they're operating under a fiduciary requirement, and they're not really getting paid a lot of money. They may get something. And this is talking about, key employees mostly. So this would probably be an executive director here would be a key employee, and generally, how many hours, and they probably would be a W-2 employee. So anyway, it's important that you understand that everyone in the organization, you should have an idea as to how much time they're involved in it as a person that's involved with the organization. But this tells the IRS, this is who we are and this is what we're doing. To simplify this form, this part, other information is found in Schedule A. Now you hear Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule O. Let me just pause here real quick and show you what the schedules look like. You don't have to worry about them because when you are doing them online, you pretty much are brought to where the form is. So let's say, I'll show you here. This is Schedule A, and I'm not gonna get into all the details in it, but it's basically, it tells the IRS of all the organizations that are filing. Your Schedule A says your name and your EIN and what kind of organization you are. That's all I'm gonna say. Are you a church, a school, a hospital, medical research? And you go down this list, and don't worry about it for now because this list doesn't appear when you do the online filing, because you pretty much go through it and the system helps you to figure it out. Schedule B is, again, if anybody, remember in the beginning when I said, if you don't have anybody that donates in excess of $5,000, then you click here to tell them, we don't have to file Schedule B. If you don't click in the first part of the filing that you don't need to file Schedule B, the system is going to expect that this form is going to be attached. And so Schedule B talks about, who you are. And generally, I would say the general rule generally applies. You can read all this if you want, but generally, the general rule will apply to the nonprofits that we are talking about. And it says that the organization received contributions totaling $5,000 or more in money or property from any one contributor. And then it tells you complete, these other parts down at the bottom. Who were they? What is their address? What was the total contributions? What type of contribution it was? The system will work with you. The electronic system will help you to put all this information in this schedule, so you don't really need to worry about it. But when we say Schedule A, Schedule B, this is Schedule B, let me show you Schedule O. Schedule O to me is like a repository of everything. So Schedule O is just this, all those lines going forward, going down. So the system will know, okay, this is the part, the question, and this is the information that you're looking for. And it sort of like puts it all down here. It could be numbers, it could be narratives, just that's what Schedule O looks like. So going back to this, a lot of this doesn't apply. So you would click here if anything is yes to respond. If not, did you engage in any significant activity not previously reported to the IRS? Are you changing what you're doing? As someone was mentioning before, what does your mission statement say you're going to be doing? So why are you doing this in that portion of the world? That kind of a thing. Were any significant changes made to the organizing or governing documents? That means, did you change the requirements that the IRS has approved and knows about, so that you could do other stuff? Did you have any unrelated business gross income? Did you decide that you're going to start a micro lending community bank kind of thing that's completely not what you're supposed to be doing, of at least $1,000 or more? Then you respond to that. Political expenditures speaks for itself. Did the organization borrow or make any loans to any officer, director, trustee, or key employees, or were any such loans made in a prior year and still outstanding at the end of the tax year covered by this return? And by the way, the organization shouldn't be making loans to the board of directors. Section 501c3 organizations, any tax imposed because you did something like you ended up getting unrelated business gross income. Did the IRS impose any tax on you? Then you put that information here, and you would know what section it applies to if you ended up having to pay the tax. So generally, again, generally, again, hold on a second, I'm sorry, I'm having, letting somebody else in, to apologize. Okay, so where were we? Here. Any tax imposed for things that you were doing outside of the scope of your nonprofit purpose. The next thing is, all organizations need to answer this question. During the tax year, was the organization a party to a prohibited shelter transaction? I couldn't begin to tell you. I was hoping that I'd have an accountant, a nonprofit accountant present today to ask what is that and how would it apply to us. But generally, you would know if you are dealing with somebody on a prohibited tax shelter transaction. So I can tell you what I think it is, but let's not waste time on that. So that's pretty much the first part, 5, and it's mostly of things that you are not. In general, based on what I know about the groups that we're talking about, these answers probably be no. Okay. This is the end of that portion. Who has the books? If I need to get a copy of something, where do I go? Where do I write? Where are they located? The IRS wants to know that. Did the organization have an interest in or a signature or other authority over a financial account in a foreign country? Do you have money overseas? They also want to know if you maintain an office outside the United States. Did the organization maintain any donor advised funds? Those are funds, not the way that grants are given to you, where the grant is given to you to operate within the scope of your mission, your vision, and your purpose. A donor advised fund is I am a rich person, and in your community, you're doing something, and I like to put some money in there, but all of the money that I'm giving you is going to be to do this, which could conflict with your purpose, but because I'm giving it to you, you take the money, and then you have to do what they say. So the IRS wants to know. I hope that makes sense. All right, did the organization operate one or more hospitals, indoor tanning services? Uh, did the organization have a controlled entity within the meaning of section 512B13? This was a question that I had. I have an idea as to what it is, but I don't have a professional to ask that from. So we'll just leave it by saying, if you receive payment from an entity, it's a payment that you receive for something. You generally would know whether it's a regular transaction or if it's something out of the norm. And if it's out of the norm, eventually you're going to need to find a place where it fits. And if it is from a controlled entity within the meaning of this section, which you're not going to get into, then you would write yes here. Generally, like I said, most of these items are no. Okay. And finally, part 6. Part 6 is for 501c3 organizations only. Check if you are using any responses here that need to be in Schedule O. Check here. Did the organization engage in lobbying activities? So that's self-explanatory. 48 is the organization at school. That's self-explanatory. Did it make a transfer to an exempt non-charitable related organization? Complete this table for the organization's 5 highest compensated employees, and the same thing down here for the 5 highest compensated independent contractors. And the IRS wants to know that you pay someone more than $100,000, someone who's an employee. They want to know all this information. Did you pay $100,000 to a contractor? They want to know all this information. And then did the organization complete Schedule A, which I showed you before? And then, you check here. Again, when you're doing this online, you don't have to worry about, looking for the form, because the system will generate it for you. Then we have signature. Somebody on the board of directors should have the capacity to sign this. If you paid somebody money, we can get into that later. If you paid somebody money to do your taxes for you, then they need to sign here and provide their PTIN number. This is pretty much the actual form. I know it's a lot of information. We're hoping that because you're dealing with nonprofits, the fact that these questions are coming up, they're sharpening your awareness of everything that you do needs to be quantified and it needs to be reported. So figuring out that a lot of the information that we discussed doesn't really apply to you, this form going forward should be something that you relate to, that you can, have a copy with you and say, hey, look at what we did, and just show your taxes to somebody. I mean, it's public information. Anything you put down in this form is actual public information. So, I would say if it's public anyway, I would use it for fundraising and grant making activities. We're going to go into the chat to see if there's any questions. So give me 1 second. I'll take a look at that. I think I saw only one. Okay. Okay, chat. Here we go. Oh, actually, I don't have any questions. Does anybody have any questions? We are choosing to believe that it is because we are so enthralled and all the information, it's so vibrant in your mind that you feel like we got this, and you do. Going forward, what we're going to do is we're going to show you briefly how to register to an online platform, and definitely get somebody in your team to begin to play with it, to understand it, because when you internally, even if you give this to somebody else, even if you give the information to an accountant to get it done, when you understand what this is all about, it helps you to better speak about the numbers of your organization. And when you speak about them, understanding how they reflect on your taxes, you are speaking in an authoritative form, and it allows people to know you know what you're talking about. You understand what the quantification and the presentation of your work service that you're doing is. All right, so we're going to move forward. And
Sir,
yes,
does the $5,000 donation have to be an individual, or can it be a combination to add
It-
up to 5,000?
it could be a combination. If you receive, the system will ask you, what was it that you received? And if you received cash, if you received an asset, as in your case, if somebody donated their time and it was more than $5,000, and you have that in-kind professional receipt that we discussed in the previous session, then you get all these papers together and they form the background for the numbers that you're putting into your tax filing. Okay, you report, thank you. We have a question from Lashonda. Thank you for the question is, how do you report in-kind donations on the easy form? Okay, so for that, we need to go back to the form. So give me 1 second while I navigate there. Navigate the form. Okay, so here we are. How do you report it? Well, it's reported on number 1, contributions, gifts, grants, and similar amounts received. So the IRS, when it looks at this number, it includes things that you received for free that have value, right? So if somebody donated, let's say I am an attorney, and let me move myself from here. I am an attorney, and I donated 50 hours to support something that the organization was doing. I write an in-kind receipt, which we have them. We've gone through those before in the previous workshop. So if you need them, let me know. But if I am an attorney and I donated 50 hours, I can write a receipt says, I am an attorney, I donated 50 hours, and the value of my time is so much per hour. So this is an in-kind receipt for professional services rendered by me for to this organization, and I would write down how much it is, and whatever that receipt quantifies, I can put it here. If I have several, then I total them up, and I total all of the in-kind professional services received on number 2. Everything else, if some don't, for Rose's situation, you received a donated structure for $47,000. That would go here under number 1. So let me see. Will you please share the in-kind receipts? Oh, the in-kind receipt. Thank you. I will be sharing what the in-kind receipt looks like. I do apologize. I'm just juggling several things at once. Maybe I can do it here. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if I can find it here. No, it's not gonna work. Okay. I do apologize. I don't like for people to wait for me. It's just this thing I have. But I know you're patient, so let's go and find that receipt. All right. Talking points. I do apologize. Okay, I should have put it in a more accessible place. Hold on. Interesting. Hold on a second. I'm just going to look for it one quick second. I have just too many windows in the way, and it's making it very difficult to find what I'm looking for. Okay. All right, I'm going to show you. This is not the one I'm going to do a search, but I'm going to show you. And I received this from Sam. Um, he wanted to share with us what a regular, let's say if somebody donates regular things that are not professional, this is what he uses. Contribution agreement is a tax receipt, and I can send this out and you guys can just, make it your own, put in your organization's name, your information. And then basically what you're saying is whoever gave the gift, was it a company, the address, the signature, if they have like a nickname, phone, email, description of the item. So let's say I donated 3 computers, 3 laptops. I'll put that here. Any restrictions? None. Anything, the retail value, I tell you, I've donated 3 laptops. This is how much they're worth. That the item need to be picked up. This is what legal aid does. You can keep that or not on your receipt. All gifts are tax deductible to the extent allowed by law, and then you can put in the name of your organization here and your tax ID number and return this time. You ask them to, because legal aid is dealing with corporations, they're asking them to sign and send it. I would say if I'm getting something from you at that moment, I'm giving you this piece of paper and I need you to sign it. And so what I would do is I would get this and I would mail them a copy if so that they can have a copy for their records. And so this is what the receipt for any contribution that is a non-cash thing. Okay, so let me just do hopefully a quick search for, because the other item, the one that we would use for when somebody does some professional work, that is different, and I wish I could show you, just so that we can move this along. It looks like this, but it's telling what the work was that was done, and it's just a different type of receipt. Yeah, I think I should just let it lay there because I don't want to spend time looking for it. We still have the other segment to go through. Any other questions before it? Go ahead.
Could you send us a copy of one for service?
You have it. This one you're gonna get, but you have the receipt for when somebody donates their professional services to you. Okay? So we're gonna move forward then, unless anybody else has any questions. Okay, we were here. Okay. Okay, Rosetta.
Yes, sir. I am.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just want to introduce our very own Rosetta Jackson. She is a paralegal with Legal Aid, and she is going to walk us through the registration process. So go ahead, Rosetta.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I appreciate that, Eleazar. And I just want to preface that if I speak too quickly, just kind of raise your hand and I'll try and slow down. But if you have any questions, of course, just put them in the chat and we'll try to answer your questions. As Eleazar said, I am a paralegal with the CRP team. My name is Rosetta Howard Jackson, and I will give the overview of the 5-step registration process. The 990 is a simple way for nonprofit organizations to prepare and file tax returns. Step 1, You will need to create a login and register. Step 2, this is your login activation notice. Once you log in, a login ID will be given. It will have your name, the name of your organization, and the login type. You must activate this login ID before you can use it. The login username is always the 9-digit EIN plus 01 for the first user. It's highlighted in green there. There are 2 types of users, ones who can only input and ones who can also sign the document. There could be many users, 1, 2, or 3, or so on. However, the system will need at least one signatory person before it releases the form. Step 3. This is the starting place for creating returns and registrations in the 990 online state charity registration system. This process walks you through the steps of creating a new 990 online filing. A 990 online filing can be either a single return, such as a Form 990, or a group of related returns, such as a Form 990, a state charity registration for Hawaii, and state charity registration for Pennsylvania, which are created and electronically filed as a group. To begin the process, please enter the start and end dates for the reporting period. For example, the fiscal year, which this filing covers, and then click the next button below. You may access more information by clicking the help icon associated with each question. Step 4. In this section, this process determines if you are allowed to file the Form 990 Easy. If your answer is yes to any of the questions here, the organization must file a Form 990 instead of a Form 990 Easy. So if this is the case, you may return to the previous web page and select the Form 990. Step 5. This page asks questions to determine whether you will be able to electronically file the IRS Form 990 Easy. And again, if you answer yes to any of the questions, you may not be able to file electronically. You can, however, still use the system to complete the forms and then mail the completed forms to the IRS and any selected states. So the next page is the summary page. Okay, so the summary page, if the above information is correct, you're ready to start entering the data into this filing. When you click the finish button, the system will save the information you have entered here and will send you to the 990 online system so you can begin entering information for your Form 990 Easy. When you are done with the IRS return, you will be able to enter the information for the state charity forms you have selected. And then we're going to have Eleazar take over from here.
Okay, thank you, Rosetta. It's a very, after you understand it, it's very intuitive. These buttons up here are gonna guide you wherever you need to go. We just selected a few extra spaces, extra shots to sort of give you an idea as to what happens after you register. You can continue. You click, you continue. It asks you if you want to e-file or US mail it. Do you want to send a copy to any participant states? Always no, because Texas is not on it doesn't send anything to Texas. If you want to give permission to the IRS to use the publicly available information for whatever their purpose is, marketing, whatever they do, you can click yes or no here. So this is what it looks like when you start. Remember in the beginning when we started, we said, okay, this is sections lines sections A through E, where it's the biographical. When you get to this point, this is sections A through E, and then it'll continue. You can go through the form itself. I'm not gonna do this here. This is going to be covered in our next session. And so anything that is grayed out, you can't change because it's set in stone. Anything that where you need to input is here. So we're gonna be sending you the next Zoom invite as we have been a couple of weeks before. This is what we're gonna be covering with any interesting items that we find along the way that'll help you to absorb this process and this actual application. If you internally are able to manage the piecing together of all of your data and then also input it in here, this system will not let you file a tax filing if there is any kind of error. And the system is, they're very good. If you have any questions, you can email them and they'll respond within 24 to 48 hours, usually 24. So this is why we, this is a tool that even starting nonprofits should at least be aware of. And you don't need to, as a director or as a founder or president, you don't need to process any of this. But it's really good if you begin to use the tool, have somebody in your organization manage something like this. This should be a part of managing your regular reporting of the good work that you do. This then this is pretty much the end of this session. Does anybody have any questions? All right. I wanted to say that Sam Prince had been detained. Sam, you might to say a few words. We sacrificed someone to make your presentation, but I think that he did a good job in your stead. Did you want to point out anything that stood out for you while you were preparing, or any other words of encouragement to our groups?
Just that when you're filling in information about in-kind contributions, the one thing you need to remember is when you state the value of something, it should be based on something. I know that sounds a little nebulous. According to the law, if someone donates an item to you, they need to secure an appraisal. Now, when you send a letter, a thank you letter, if it states a value of the item that they have donated to you, you are in effect acting as their appraisal. And you don't want to do that. So what we do is we give people that are donating items to us a form and ask them to tell us what the value is, so we can state it for our audited records purposes, our financial records, and also so that the IRS doesn't come and say, how did you determine the value of this? It's very important.
Thank you, Sam. This is the conclusion of this session intended to instill capacity into grassroots nonprofits. The nonprofit coaching team would like to thank you for your presence and participation. We look forward to sharing with you in our next class. Thank you.